I know some of you genuinely feel like you don't love them. I have sat with parents in the shadow of their own parenting go, sometimes I hate my kid. Sometimes I don't love them. It's been a long time since I have felt love towards this child. It has been so hard. Welcome to another episode of Beyond Risk and Back. Thank you so much, parents, teachers, clinicians, whomever you are listening to this show. Thank you for being here. Thank you for looking for support, getting help, listening to the experts, getting advice to do something differently than you did yesterday. If you're struggling with your teen, you're struggling with your kids, with your own life, you get it. And we can't solve the problem with the mind that created it. And so if you're here, you're looking for a solution to the struggle, I think we've got an incredible guest today. Paul has this concept of the role of love in our work as parents. And so we're gonna experience it deeply. We're gonna dive into the deep end, cannonballing off the high dive. Thank you for listening, liking, subscribing, and sharing Beyond Risk and Back with other families, teachers, and clinicians who are looking for the experts and the support. I've got Paul Zolman, an expert on the role of love. Paul, thank you so much for being on Beyond Risk and Back, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Aaron. My pleasure to be here.
I am very curious because we talked at the beginning about love languages, and I think a lot of people have read the book. I certainly did, but it sounds like you did a whole lot more than read it. You've embraced it as a whole concept, lifestyle, but you've also taken it beyond a relationship with a partner or a spouse, your marriage. You've got 8 kids. Paul, give us the 411 on Mr. Zolman's life.
Thank you, Aaron. Well, as far as 8 kids, when you find something that you like to do, just keep doing it. That's all I'm saying. That's all I can say. So,
that's awesome. What's the age range of your kids?
The oldest just turned 40 this year, and the youngest is calculate 26, I think. 26. Actually, he'll be 26 this coming Friday.
This Friday, 26. How did you end up doing the work that you're doing now? I've been to your website, this coaching around love, this teaching people the role of love in their life. How did you end up here?
And I ended up here because I didn't have it in my youth. I was raised in an abusive family, and I think things like that can be generational. They're not genetic, but they're generational. My grandparents, that as far as I know back, they had some dysfunction within their family. They passed it on to my father, who passed it on to me. It's just kind of a cycle that goes on generationally. That's what I grew up in. I grew up in severe abuse. Most weekends, my father was a truck driver, so he's gone during the week. When he came home on Friday, he always took my mother out. I absolutely love him for that. Just honored my mother. And then I'm the thorn between 2 roses, a boy between 2 girls at the end of. I'm number 10 of 11 children. All the rest are brothers. And so by the time my mother's done telling my dad, always at the Maverick bar, that's where their date was, always over alcohol. But I realized later in life that what must have happened is my mother starts disgorging what happened to all the other boys, and boys will be boys. They're like puppies, and they'll just swat at each other and growl and bite each other, and they'll do all that. And that's kind of what happened in our family. But my father would probably get so annoyed at them that it would just piled up, stacking those annoyances until he'd flash. And by the time my mother got to the 10th child, me, the flash was so bad that I felt like I got a lot of the brunt of everything. I mean, I was spanked one time so hard that I was black and blue for about 3 weeks. But it was back in a time when it was Ghostbusters, like, who are you going to call? I mean, there were no facilities to call, no place to report. Thought it was just part of the family, so we just kept it inside the family. No one to talk to about it. And so that's kind of where I came from, kind of where it all started.
Paul, there is a process, and this question is completely out of left field. It's something that I just thought of. There is a process in our own rites of passage where it is said that somewhere around 14 to 16 years old, we make a vow, and it's based on what our parents did or did not do. Now, when people grow up in traumatic experiences, an ACE household, right? Adverse childhood experiences. This is a quick shout out to the ACE test that anybody can take online for free, 10 questions. It is a powerful experience, but you've had an adverse childhood experience. And I'm wondering about your vow. You said you started this role of love concept because love wasn't present for you as a child. Do you remember making the decision to destroy the legacy? Do you remember the moment where you said, "This ain't happening with me and my kids"?
Absolutely. I do remember. That's interesting that you bring that up, Aaron, too, because no one else has ever brought that up. I think it was the vow was more in a negative sense because consider where I came from. That it was all negative. It was kind of a subset or subculture that anger has its own vocabulary. It has its own humor, its stinging sarcasm. It has all that thing. So my goal and my decision, my vow at the time was never to do that. And so, in a negative sense, if you make a vow that way, it's going to produce negative results. And two negatives in math multiplied together will make a positive. It doesn't work like that in relationships. So it absolutely does not work like that. And I found that out I had to turn that around and actually have a positive impact. Say, what will I do? And that's kind of what I've done. Been able to get to that point.
So then, besides having lots of kids, what did you do? How did you navigate from a violent childhood to a loving fatherhood?
It came in increments, as everything does. It just came line upon line, precept on precept. It just comes a little bit at a time. So I remember at age 35, Aaron, that still blaming my father for failed relationships, blaming my father. But by age 35, he had already passed away. He was gone, been gone 7 years. And I just kind of woke up and thought, why am I still blaming him? He can't even defend himself. He's gone. And then I thought, I'm responsible. I'm actually responsible for my own actions. And then it started turning the corner a little bit. And I did a little bit of corporal punishment with my children. They might say it was a lot because I would still have the same thing as my father had. And then my brother had it too, that we'd be annoyed, and then flash. You never knew when that flash was going to happen. And when it flashed, you just feel horrible inside. You go back down, you're all tamped down, and you don't have the anger anymore. And then you're just going back to it. And I figured out what it was, Aaron. I figured out that I was annoyed at something somebody else did. And it was totally out of my lane. It's not my responsibility to make choices for them. I don't have the responsibility to drive in their lane. They are adults, or they were old enough children. They could make their own decisions that way. Once I stepped out of their lane and realized that all I can do is send out love. I can't even call it up or beckon it to come to me. I have no control over that. Absolutely no control over love coming my way. But I have control over sending it out and then responding when it comes back my way. Once I realized that, I realized there's a spectrum there. And I just want to illustrate that. I know that some of your listeners are just audio only, but for those that are video, I'll explain this. So went out walking the other day, and I found this walking stick while I'm walking. And the bark isn't on the stick at all. One side is very, very smooth. And then the other side has some points on it, some places where maybe there was a branch or something that broke off. But it's I call this kind of the naughty side of the stick, and this is the nice side of the stick. So Santa Claus has a stick just like that, Aaron, just in case you're wondering, the naughty and nice stick. So that's how everybody gets their presents, from the naughty and nice. But when you put that as a spectrum, naughty and nice, put anger on the naughty side. And when I realized that I'm on the naughty side, there was a paradigm shift. Oh, yeah, I can do three things. I can keep blaming people and stay right where I'm at. I can become naughtier, or I can move toward the loving side of the stick. And I decided I needed to move toward, get out of that culture. The whole culture, the generational culture of that anger, that flashing, get out of that culture and go to the loving side of the stick. That's what really was the paradigm shift for me.
There's some very basic and simple things that you have said that I want to point out. Number one, you just said, "Oh, I'm annoyed at something someone else has done." That is such a basic statement and so true. I mean, that is just exactly why we are angry. We're annoyed at something someone else has done. It's violated our value system. And from there, we complicate it into all kinds of things. But the basics is, we keep stacking things on it. So that makes sense. The parents listening to this call, their teens struggling, their kids, smoking pot, they're trying harder drugs, they're sneaking out at night, they stole the car, they're cutting themselves, they can't get out of bed because of depression, and we find ourselves as parents pissed because of something they're doing. But then you said something else about getting out of the lane, and I want to understand that better because it started to make sense to me. So I want you to explain, what do you mean by getting out of that lane? What does that mean?
As far as love goes, and what I've discovered of the 5 languages of love, that I read the book 4 or 5 times. Coming from where I came from, that childhood that I came from, I didn't get it. I mean, I didn't get it. Even after reading it 4 or 5 times, if somebody offered me $1 million to name the 5 love languages, I don't think I could have done it. I mean, it did not go inside me. And I read through the book, but the book didn't go through me. The principles I really liked. But the application that Dr. Chapman says that, well, if I guess, Aaron, what your love language is, or if I perceive what it might be, and I cater to that, we're going to be buddies. I'm a horrible guesser, Aaron. This is not going to happen. Most of the time, it's not going to happen. And the second thing is that, well, if I take this survey and then I find out what love language I am, what am I supposed to do with that? Advertise? Hello, Aaron. I'm Gifts. What do you have for me today? Yeah, exactly. It's a little bit ridiculous when it sounds that way, but that's how I perceived it. It didn't work. Both of those applications didn't work. So what I did was I contacted Dr. Chapman. I said, are you licensing those icons? Because I had an idea. I said, are you licensing those little icons that you have for each one of those love languages? And his attorney sent back a letter, said, no, we're not doing that. So I contacted a local international or intellectual law attorney, a copyright attorney, and asked him the same question, said, what can I do with this? I've got this idea. He said, that theory, like the love language theory, is not copyrightable. Application is. So I was able to create my own little icons, put them and make it into a game. And there's just 2 instructions. I'm going to show the die right now. For the listeners, I'm showing a hand that has an hourglass on it. Now I'm showing a hand that is like a waiter that has a plate
Service.
that's for service. Yeah.
Yeah. So time, giving time, acts of service.
That was the time. The hourglass is the time. Acts of service.
Yeah.
So I've got 2 hands creating a heart, like a lot of people do these days. But then in addition to that, I have a little conversation fly out. So those are the words.
Words of love. Touch.
There's touch. 2 hands touching each other. And then you've got a hand holding a gift. So five love languages, 6 sides on the die. This one's surprised me. So there's just 2 instructions, Aaron. You roll the die every day. That's the love language you practice all day that day. That's your lane. That's what you're doing. It's your choice. Your lane. You can't overlay that onto anybody else. They can choose. You have to give them their choice. And when people are empowered with their own choice, hopefully they're going to make good choices. And you can encourage that, and you can check on them from time to time about their choices. In fact, I had an older brother that I went to live with. I got tired of the atmosphere and the circumstances in my own family. So I left after my junior year of high school, 17 years old. I go live with my brother, my older brother. And what he would do each night that I absolutely loved, he would invite me into the living room, just ask how my day was, and then say, what went well? What didn't go so well? And what do you hope that you can do better the next day? And it was almost an analysis of the day, but he would just ask nice questions, just kind questions, just trying to find out how to go. And what did I think about it? He really never said what he thought about it, and that was just very valuable for me because it really helped me as a 17-year-old crystallize what I wanted to do. Get in my lane. What is my lane? Stop going in these other people's lanes. Stop doing what other people are doing just because they're doing it. Choose who you want to be. And so in with this love roll of love die, I'm choosing that I want to be that person that sends out love all day long to everyone. When I created it, Aaron, I was single. I didn't have a significant other to to express this to, as Dr. Chapman would suggest. So that's different. It's important to express it to everyone. There's a consistency that grows there when you're doing it all day long. Nobody that I know is with their significant other all day long. So basically, it's a part-time job. And when you're at home, you're supposed to love. When you go to work, you don't have to love. Come back home, I forgot. I'm not supposed to love again. And this just makes you go crazy. Don't stop the craziness. Just be consistent in sending it out without any regards of it ever coming back. Karma will say it'll come back. The law of attraction says it'll come back. The law of harvest says it'll come back. Trust it, it'll come back. Just trust that it's going to be there. It'll be there when you need it. It's like a piggy bank. Putting the money in the bank. It's going to be there when you need it.
So I'm gonna start in with the questions. I know the parents I have listening to this, I know they can feel it. I'm feeling it. I'm listening to you talk, and I'm like, yeah, like that. It feels good to roll the die and practice that this day. And then the phone rings, and your kid's in the principal's office because they've been busted with a bunch of little baggies in their locker. They're failing their classes, and you got to go pick them up. You got to leave work again to go pick them up. What do I do now? How do I keep doing this? How do I stay in my lane? How do I, in that moment, decide who I'm going to be? Because you and I talked off the air. Being in love and loving your lover and reading the love languages and rolling the love die is easy when it's all going really well. But when you go to wake your kid up for breakfast and they're not there, is that when I roll the die? Like, how do I find love in those moments? And you and I did talk about this off air. There's no recovery without it. That's what I want parents to hear. This is why I brought Paul on. There is no recovery without love. Self-love first. Love of a supportive relationship second, and then love of your child third. Parents, you know that. That's the mantra of the show. But Paul, how do I remember to roll the dice when I'm so done with the bullshit my kid has been pulling for the last year? I'm exhausted. I'm broke.
Yeah, Aaron, you just said something very significant with the bullshit that the kid's doing. So it's their lane. So you're out of their, yeah, that's their lane. That's their choice. And when you get to that point of your determination of who are you, and stay with that determination. I'm a loving person. I'm sending out love all day long without any expectation of coming back, knowing it's coming back. That's who I am. And so rolling the die actually gets you to understand all 5 love languages. Over a 30-day period, you will have given away all 5 love languages so that you can see it when it comes your way. For these parents, this is so valuable. If they don't know what their child's love language is, and they're sending words to them, and that child needs time, it's not going to happen. They need to understand and detect what love language that child is. What is that child sending back your way? What are, if anything, what are they sending back your way? And just try to understand what you're looking for in that 30-day period, Aaron, and all the parents out there. What you're looking for is when people light up. You're able to use your observation skills. No longer, Aaron, do you have to stop the relationship, say, pause for a minute. Could you take this survey so I know how to love you? Come on, really? You don't have to do that. Watch. Just watch what they're doing. Watch when people light up, you're making their day. That's a primary love language. You just wash, rinse, and repeat. Same thing happens with the children. you're gonna find out what lights them up and focus on what lights them up. That's how you're going to touch those children. You got to detect what is it that makes their day. What is it that they really like? Focus on pointing out the good things that they do, even if they're in the principal's office, even if they've got the baggies, even if point out something that's good about that child. There's good about everyone. You can find it. Absolutely, you can find it. Quit focusing on the bad. And then how I like to explain this, Aaron, is with a magnifying glass. Whatever you magnify is going to get larger. If you're focusing on those problems, guess what? They're expanding. They're getting larger. If you're focusing on the good parts of the children, guess what? That's going to be larger. And that's really key. You've got it. And I made mistakes as a parent of 8 children. I made mistakes like that, realized that, oh, I'm focusing on the bad behavior, and that's going to grow bigger as I focus on that bad behavior.
Do me a favor and go to brabapp.com, BRABAPP.com. That's my parenting masterclass. I have 56 classes over there for $99. This is everything I have ever taught parents in the last 20 years of working as a residential treatment owner and as a parent crisis counselor and as a teen sober coach. Go to brabapp.com, BRABAPP.com. Self-paced course that you have access to 24/7. I think you'll find it a lot of help. I'll see you there. Brings up a question about enabling. If I'm only focusing on the bad behavior and they're doing bad stuff and I just decide to talk about their good stuff and focus on the stuff they like, it sounds like a magic pill. But am I also not just enabling them to continue doing bad stuff and still calling them my pretty princess or my precious prince or stuff like that? Like,
no, I don't think so, Aaron. And the reason for that is because you're sending out genuine love. There is no expectation. Again, no expectation of it ever coming back. But you're sending out genuine love. These are genuine statements. These are not pretty princess, because if you're making them up to be a princess, then you're setting yourself up as well. They're just regular people. They really are regular people, and make it very genuine. And don't go overboard that way. And you've got to be genuine in the praise. It has to be genuine. When back to the naughty and nice stick, just take one word, for example. Let's take the word sarcasm. Where does it belong, Aaron?
It's on the naughty side.
It absolutely is on the naughty side.
Let's be clear. That's how a lot of the parents are going to approach those first words or gifts of love. It's going to be sarcastic because they're not feeling it all the time. They've had their hearts broken. They're frustrated. They're exhausted. They're pissed, and now they've got to focus on the love stuff. The answer is, yeah,
sarcasm. So sarcasm's on the naughty side of the stick. What is the opposite? What is the counterpart on the love side of the stick? On the nice
genuine,
being authentic, absolutely, being real, being true. Those, when you consider those qualities, and in these sessions that I had with my brother, and I don't know what I called them. I just remember it's like an analysis of the day, and I didn't know what else to do it because I was in a bookkeeping class at the time, so I just called it an analysis. But I really enjoyed that. I really kind of looked forward to it. It wasn't every night, but it was only occasionally, like maybe 2, maybe 3 times a week, that I'd have this analysis discussion with my brother, what went right that day. And he's trying to help me understand and make choices so I could be empowered to make my own choices of what to do that was right. And that's what these parents need to do. Let's find a way to empower with love. As you mentioned, Aaron, it has to be with love. Empower these children so they can be strong enough to make their own choices. One thing about this die that I've taken to the schools, and it may work for these parents, but it may not, is that if they're able to roll the die with the children each day, and the child will buy into loving and sending out love that day, maybe at the end of the day, they can get to the point where they can record, where they're responsible for what they rolled, what opportunities they saw to love in that way, what they did about those opportunities. You remember I said that I was 35 years old before I realized that I was blaming my parents. And blame is one of those things that if it's somebody else's fault, you have absolutely no reason to change. If they can blame anybody, then there's no uh, there's no opportunity for change right there. It's kind of a false atonement in some way, that you're stuck on the stick. You're stuck wherever you're at on the stick. You're stuck until you realize that you're blaming somebody. Then once you realize that and decide to do something different, you can either go to the left or go to the right on the stick, but you can't move. You can't move. You're stationary if you're blaming somebody.
Let's talk about boundaries as we start to come near the end of the episode, because this all sounds amazing. Look, I'm asking questions I know are going to be asked, and I agree. And I know the parents agree. And parents, I want to say this, I know that when he was saying you be genuine, I know some of you genuinely feel like you don't love them. I have sat with parents in the shadow of their own parenting go, sometimes I hate my kid. Sometimes I don't love them. It's been a long time since I have felt love towards this child. It has been so hard. And you know what happens every time? Every time I've heard, and for 20 years, Paul, I've heard parents say that, because this is hard. These are terrible things. And then the parent starts to tell me about the kid. They've told me they don't feel, they're exhausted, they're furious, they're fatigued, they're afraid. And they start telling me that they don't have that love anymore. They don't feel it. They know they love their kid. And then they start telling me all the amazing things about their kid. Do you know how many parents, after talking to them for 20 minutes, will then tell me, he really is a good kid. She really is an amazing kid. Every single one of them, even after they said, I don't know if I love him right now. And so let's talk about boundaries, because sometimes these types of coachings, this type of information feels like you don't get to feel bad. You don't get to set limits. You can only express love, and that's going to solve everything. And you and I know better. Healthy relationships have boundaries. We talked about this.
Absolutely. And so I think that the boundaries that you want to set is just help them understand what is their responsibility. I wish all the kids in kindergarten, from kindergarten to sixth grade, could roll the die in the morning and have to do the journal at the end of the day. I've got a program going on in the school system here that is teaching that responsibility. They're responsible for their own actions throughout the day. And they understand that by having to report of what they did that day. And if we can teach that early, then I think it's going to solve a lot of the problems for the parents that are listening right now. But we're past that. We're past that point. So how do you set the boundaries now? You set the boundaries with just helping them understand the lane, understand who are you, who do you want to be. Don't worry about who you are now. Anybody, look at me, look at where I came from, the wrong side of the tracks. In fact, about a year ago, I took my wife to my hometown where I grew up, and she said, I told her I was raised on the wrong side of the tracks. She said, there is no right side of the tracks in this town. And it's just kind of hilarious that way. But we find out just a little bit more about who they want to be, and then set boundaries. Well, these are the boundaries to get to that spot. This is what needs to be done, and help them understand how to become. And when they understand how to become, everything that you become, whether it's a track star, whether it's a consultant, whether it's a podcaster, everything has its boundaries. This is the lane of that person. Help them understand their own lane and how to stay in that lane. Somebody that is doing activities that are outside of that lane, that doesn't fit. It won't fit. It won't help them be successful. You're just trying to help them become. And when we can show them what those boundaries are for becoming whoever they want to be, and it's their choice, really, it's their choice, whoever they want to be. Where does this road go? And just try to help them understand, if you keep doing this, where's that road lead? Quit being angry at them. And really, seriously, stop being angry at them. Try to guide them. And that's what this job of parents is really to guide these children if they will listen. If they're not listening, just keep trying. Just keep trying. Keep loving them until there'll be a moment that there'll be a teaching moment. I tried this die with a family of 5 children. The youngest was 4 years old. And one day he wrote physical touch, and he's pumping his fist and said, yes, physical touch, physical touch. So excited. He goes and beats up on his brothers. He thought that was permission to do that. And so, as funny as that is, it was a perfect teaching moment. That's what we're watching for, parents, watching for those teaching moments to be able to say, no, this is appropriate physical touch. This is what you would do. You do the high five, the fist bumps, and the hugs to your brothers. That would be appropriate physical touch.
Paul, how are parents going to follow up with you, find you, buy the dice, how do parents find you after the show?
They can find me at rolloflove.com, and it's ROLE. It changes you within. ROLL is what you do with the die. ROLE is the change within. ROLEoflove.com. And they can find the book, the die, the journal there. If they're listening here and they don't, if they only listen to podcasts and they only listen while they're driving or something like that, they also can find the Audible of the book, The Roll of Love, that I wrote on Amazon. Now, you don't want to type in Roll of Love because you get a million things there. Type in my name. It'll come right up. You either get the Kindle version or the Audible version of that on Amazon.
Paul Zolman, everybody. Roll of Love, ROLE of love.com. There is no way to state how important the experience and expression of love in recovery is. You cannot separate them. Therapy tries. I know many people who love their therapists in very appropriate ways. Recovery and treatment centers have to try because the state, the licensing, all of that requires that you have very appropriate and ethical boundaries with people who are in very, very vulnerable places in their lives. It was love that saved my life in the 24 hours of my lowest point in recovery 3 times. There was a stranger saying, I love you. It was a divine source saying, I love you. And it was my dad saying, I love you. At the lowest point of my life, that saved it. It turned the tide. I rounded the corner and I saw hope where only before I could see dope. So you don't have to believe that in this moment, you have to feel love. You have love for your children. Otherwise, let's be honest, you wouldn't be listening to this show. So start there. Roll Paul's dice and practice that for a day. And at the end of the day, take notes. How'd you do? I love what he's saying. That's your lane. Stop worrying about the lane that everybody else is in. And I know this may mean your kids too, because the lane they're in looks like it's headed right towards a brick wall. And you know what? It might be. Love can turn it. Stay in your lane. Become the type of person you know you are. Show your kid how to become the type of person they want to be. As always, I want to thank Deepen Productions for producing this show, making me sound good. And I want to say to all of my listeners, thank you. Remember to take care of yourselves first, your adult relationships second, and your children third, so you can do your best work with your children. I'm Aaron Huey. I'll see you next week on Beyond Risk and Back.